Okay, so let's look at the role of the governance system. The governance system is basically the structures and systems that are there to oversee control and risk management. So they are concerned with directing, informing, as well as overseeing management, right? So the biggest question here is, did the governance system do its work? Did it do its work? So, just to explain it further, these are the management structures that evaluate the performance of controls, risk management, and to some extent, internal audit through scrutinization of regular reports submitted to them, which means various managers will submit reports to the governance structures, right? As well as the risks. The management report, the reports will include performance reports, risk management reports, as well as internal audit reports. They are also submitted depending on the structure. Some reports will not be submitted to all of those structures. They will submitted to selected structures. But we're going to look at the structures um, um, just after the next bullet. So the other question is, did they ignore control inadequacy in the risk register, red flags on performance management reports or internal audit reports, or was the info concealed? So what does this mean? We're trying to figure out whether the controls in the risk register were inadequate, but the governance structure failed, the governance system failed to identify those, because the risk register will be submitted to the relevant committee, which is in this case a risk management committee, for them to review all the risks. Now, did they not see that the controls which are there for the escape risk were inadequate, or they just ignored it, or they ignore the red flags which were submitted, the red flags which are contained in the management report? Because also in the report you can see that performance, in terms of the performance information, you can see when the controls are not effective or when they are inadequate. You can see in a performance report. Then also the internal audit reports will tell you if the controls are either inadequate or ineffective. All the reports for internal audit will always tell you. So we're trying to figure out whether that information was ignored or the information was not submitted to them. Right. Now, let's look at the examples of these various structures of the governance system. Now, the highest structure will be the board of directors, um, which is responsible for everything in the organization, and they account to the shareholders of an organization. Now, the next one will be the risk management committee. The risk management committee is mostly concerned with the risk management. Its role is to oversee how risk management is carried out in the organization. Right. So anything that has to do with the risk will be submitted to the committee, and the committee will scrutinize everything and advise accordingly. So did they do their job well in terms of the risk register? Were the controls for the risk of escape adequate in the risk register? That's a question. Now, you also have the Security Management Committee, which is responsible for overseeing security management in the company. So, was the Security Management Committee aware of the security breaches within the Mangaung Correctional Center, or they just ignored everything, or they were not aware. The information submitted to them was concealed, which means it did not contain all the details relating to the controls which are not functioning as intended. But then there was a, a blind spot which was spotted by the committee when it visited there. So the question you will ask yourself: did the Security Management Committee ignore that blind spot, knowing very well the blind spot is next to the emergency exit, and there is a cell which is a single cell which can be used to execute an escape? Furthermore to that, the an inmate was sent to that cell to stay there, knowing very well that there's no access by the CCTV to that area. Now, if that information was available to the Security Management Committee, then it means they failed to do their work. But even if it was not available, it was their job to inspect the center to ensure that all the security management all the security measures are being put in place, and they are adequate to respond to any risk. Right. Now, going back to risk management committee, the risk management committee can sometimes include the IT risk management, right? Sometimes you'll have a separate IT risk management committee depending on the size and complexity of an organization, right? Some organizations only have one risk management committee, which includes the overseeing of IT risk as well. So the other committee structure or the other governance structure will be an internal control committee. So depending on the organization, in some organizations you will have an internal control committee, then in some you won't have it. Then the work of the internal control committee will be embedded in the other committees, right? Now, it's a structure responsible for overseeing internal controls in the company. So they are there to ensure that every division has controls in place, there are policies in place, there are procedures, there are standard operating procedures, there are manuals, there are systems, right, that will assist the organization in responding to risks, and it will assist the organization in ensuring that the objectives are being achieved. Now let's look at the last governance structure, which I did not mention. So it's an audit committee. Sometimes an audit committee will be one committee with a risk. So you have risk and audit committee. So that committee will be responsible for overseeing overseeing financial management, how the company reports your financial statements. They will scrutinize your financial statements. They oversee internal controls, and they also oversee risk management. So most importantly, the audit committee will also oversee auditing, external audit and internal audit. They scrutinize the report and ensure that management responds to all the findings and the recommendations.